Welcome to a special Inside Carolina. I guess it's a post game. We're a little late. It's Saturday night, if you are so inclined to know when we're recording this. North Carolina played a scrimmage, basically a second blue-white game up in Cherokee, North Carolina, in front of a good-sized crowd there in a local gym. Autograph session in the morning, basketball in the afternoon. You know when that's going on, Inside Carolina is going to be there, and you know when there's a game, there's going to be a post game. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Rob Harrington. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt as always. Rob, just general thoughts here. It's an interesting setup. We saw the traditional blue-white game, I guess, last week, and then they do this for the western part of the state, and they go out there and they put on a show for the crowd. Had a dunk contest in the warm-up lines, show off some athleticism, and then we get to see a second look at Carolina, although with the caveat against themselves, and we'll talk about that. But your overall thoughts on what you saw today?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised because I was worried that this particular event, I mean, given they didn't even announce the game time until today, I think, I was just thinking this is going to be almost like an all-star game with zero defense. But I thought it looked fairly structured. It didn't look dissimilar to me from the blue-white game itself. So I was pleased with that. Overall take is that obviously, we're taking ginger steps into analysis based on something like this, as you noted, because they're playing each other. But I do already see differences in how they're playing. And as much as I know Hubert's not trying to let them show much, but you can tell that they are putting a real emphasis on player movement and passing. And I am delighted by it. Now, they have to get a lot better at it, which we'll talk about. But I'm really happy with that style of play. And as we move into Friday night, which I realize is an exhibition, that one's going to feel like a real game against BYU. I think we'll know a lot more after that. But going into that game, I feel good about where they are.
Yeah, you always have to caveat these exhibition games with, is the defense really good or the offense really good or what? And so the rotations will be interesting. You mentioned BYU. That'll be the biggest thing for me to see how to do it. But today in this ball game, to your point, let's talk about the offense a little bit. It is much more, I guess, free flowing. They're more lobs. They're more wing screens rather than top of the key pick and rolls and all. And your general thoughts here on the unselfish aspect of it. I think part of that is from having so many new players, and they're trying to share the basketball early. But to your point, it does look different. What makes it different? What can North Carolina fans expect to see when this BYU game is televised? What can they expect to see offensive-wise that they've shown these past couple scrimmages?
I think we're going to see a lot more player movement off the ball. And so less of the stretching the court, getting stationary while there's some structure happening away. To me, it looks through these two scrimmages that they're getting more players involved on each play. So instead of having the action in one compartmentalized area of the court, now the whole team is moving more. And I really like that. I think fans of the Dean Smith era will like to watch it. I'm not saying it's the same thing. They're still going to have high ball screens, but I think you'll see something that looks familiar to you as a Carolina basketball person. I think you'll enjoy that. The other thing I think you mentioned, and I think we'll dive into this with more granularity later, I think Kyan Evans specifically will very much benefit from these wing screens that you noted, Tommy, because I don't think that he's as comfortable making plays freelance at the top of the key with a ball screen. I think he's such a deadly wing shooter that the defenses are gonna have to rush him and close out very aggressively. So if you couple that with these wing screens and the way that he sees the court, he's not a fancy passer, but he finds these cross court passes. So if the defense shifts toward him, he'll find someone who's open on the other side who can shoot. I think that could be really effective.
Yeah, I felt like last year it was a screen at the top of the key, and it was either a roll down the lane or a step out, and it sort of bogged down. With the screens out on the wings, I feel like you've got the opportunity to roll to the rim. You've got the opportunity to go out. And, Rob, something they did more, at least it felt like watching today more than that I remember last year, is they'll skip it. It doesn't go station to station around like you're playing around the world like we used to play back in the day. And I thought those benefits there with those corner threes, and I thought everybody sort of took part in that. I thought Jaron Stevenson flashed some things. but at times they were sloppy. And your rationale for the sloppiness, is it unfamiliarity still? Is it getting used to each other? What is all that going on?
I think it's unfamiliarity. I think it's not just they don't know each other's styles yet, but they don't have role clarity yet. Certainly at the point of attack, who is the point guard, and so you see some mistakes around when to initiate. What's the trigger to starting the play? Some of it too, in fairness to the ball handlers, is that the defense in all of these plays knows exactly what they're running. So guys are cheating a little bit. And they're jumping to spots. It's not always good defense. They're just sort of they're keying in on what they know the play is. That's another reason we'll get a better look at that against BYU. I'm expecting less slappiness against them. I will say, just to point out a little bit of individual stuff as we go, I do think Caleb Wilson needs to be real careful about dribbling 4 or 5 times from the top of the key. Certainly, if he tries to do that in a one-on-one situation with AJ DeBonsa, which would be a temptation for him. DeBonsa, of course, being the number 1 player in the class incoming. Carolina, of course, recruiting him very hard. I think they'll need to continue to help him refine his decision-making, not just his shot selection in and of itself. But you saw him today. You have quite a few drives where he just went into traffic, didn't have a real plan. I think they need to continue working with him on that. Otherwise, a lot of these passing turnovers, as mentioned, unfamiliarity, and the fact the defense is so familiar with them, that they are very familiar with these plays, so they're jumping it.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's a big point that a lot of people don't get in the scrimmages when they're playing each other. Is I know what you're doing. I know you're going here with the ball or whatever, and it makes it more difficult. It makes it, when it's more successful or when they do have success, then it tells you that Kyan Evans is working it, and he's not just going. He's not going from one line to the next or one dot to the next. He's making plays there. Let's talk about Caleb Wilson a little bit, and I want to talk about it in this frame of mind, and I'm going off your script or going away from the script you had, and I apologize, but this is where it gets fun. I don't think this team is going to – they've got more size. Hubert has talked about getting bigger. This team is not going to be a banger inside. I think Caleb Wilson probably the only guy that can have some success banging a little bit. But where I see success for Vasar, for Jaron Stevenson if he goes down there, and for Caleb Wilson, is to sort of use that athleticism versus using the size aspect of it, of post offense. Rob, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's the one thing we haven't seen yet, or at least I haven't noticed yet, is we talk about playing vertically. You're seeing a lot of good plays sort of in and out, spreading the ball around the perimeter, but the power game is missing. I haven't seen anything from Vasar. He has good touch in there. I mean, he has a real nice half hook. I want him to take those shots, but he's just not in position often enough. Caleb Wilson's sort of playing inside, more out. I did like that Zayden High, when he had a mismatch on a couple of occasions, he posted up Derek Dixon. He took him inside. He shot a turnaround short jumper. It was a good shot for him. So I like that recognition. But I'm still waiting to see them feed the ball into the post a little bit more. It may just take some time. Certainly you don't want them to become one-dimensional, even though I like the stuff they're doing on the perimeter. They will eventually need to incorporate. And you have this good front court, to use them as something other than as screeners and as jump shooters. That might take a little bit more time, but I'm definitely looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like when they go inside and you make a quick move. If they catch and they try to back somebody in, that I don't see that working terribly much. But if Vasar catches, and you mentioned that jump hook later in the second half, he struggled a little bit in the first half getting acclimated or getting settled down. But in the second half, when he got the ball on the post, he immediately went to his jump hook off the glass and is successful. And the same thing with Wilson. And then you've got Jaron Stevenson hunting shots on the outside. And I think for me, watching this team, Rob, is going to be how they shoot it from the outside. They've got guys that can shoot it well, and they look good shooting. There's nobody out there with a shot that you're saying, like, what are they doing? Everybody looks like they're shooting well, got good form and all that. How do you see the offense working from the outside but not devolving into just shooting from the outside consistently and settling from the outside?
I think that's the challenge. I think when you do have good shooters and you don't have dynamic playmakers off the dribble, which they don't have, and you don't have an established power game, the temptation would be okay, well, let's just fire up the first open three because you have all these shooters, you're stretching the court. That makes sense. I think in order to have the type of offense that I believe they can have, and I think you're saying the same thing, you've got these guys down there, you have coordinated, bigger guys, some athleticism and some touch. To have a really balanced and potent offense that I believe they can have, they have to incorporate them as primary action. I do think they will inherently be a little better on the offensive glass than they have been last year, certainly. But I don't think that's enough. I think they need to become the first look sometimes too. And as we said, maybe it's not there yet, or they're just not showcasing it as much at this stage. But that's another thing I'll be looking for against BYU and going into the season. Certainly, by the time we get to Kansas, they're going to have to play a more balanced game. So I think that they've got basically a 3-week deadline to start to incorporate that more. But I do think it's there.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch. You mentioned the offensive rebounds. I mean, Caleb Wilson's going to be a ball hawk. He's going to be a guy that gets those offensive rebounds. And when you get an offensive rebound, for Carolina last year at least, it didn't really result in a kick-out three unless it was the other team doing it consistently. We're talking with Rob Harrington discussing North Carolina's Cherokee scrimmage, autograph session scrimmage, second blue-white game, whatever you want to call it, as they get ready to play a real scrimmage against BYU this coming weekend. Rob, just player to player, what'd you see from individuals that you liked? Caleb Wilson, I think we agree, is the best player on the team. It certainly has the highest ceiling. But there's other guys out here that are maybe not getting that recognition away from the Inside Carolina message boards and the total diehard folks. What'd you see from some individuals that sort of stood out for you?
Well, I was happy. We've already talked about it a little bit, but I was happy to see both Zayden High and Jaron Stevenson step up a little bit, be more assertive, especially Stevenson, because the rap on him, and even Hubert Davis has acknowledged the rap on him has been that he's just not aggressive enough. And he wasn't necessarily scrapping in this game, but I was glad to just see him look to take a shot a little bit more inside and outside, and good finishing. I thought the guards were under control. We got our first look at Derek Dixon, who did not play in the prior game, of course. And I like the way that he's under control. He's never going to wow you athletically, but I think in greater structure, as the season comes into shape and they're playing more competitive games, with especially in the ACC with people who know them, I think having someone who can thrive in structure in a possession that gets bogged down, which occasionally will happen. I think Dixon will definitely have a role in this team. I like what he showed. Kyan Evans is not, again, going to be Elliot Cadeau or RJ Davis or Caleb Love. That's not his game. But I really like the way that he keeps himself involved as a passer. He's not going to make the trickiest passes. And when he tries, sometimes I think the instincts aren't quite where you'd want it to be for a true point guard. I think the skepticism there is real. But on the other hand, he's a very willing passer. And I think it's sort of like a quarterback seeing the underneath route and the long route. And I think he sees the entire court. It may not be the most creative manner of delivery, but I think from that point of view, he'll do perfectly fine. And if he commands as much respect as a shooter as I expect him to, I think that in and of itself, too, will make him an effective point guard. We haven't spent a lot of time on Seth Trimble. I feel like he's been more willing. The second half, he stepped up some, but he's been more willing to let these guys get acclimated. I mean, he's the old warhorse at this point, sort of like RJ Davis did last year. These games are less important for a returnee of that experience than they are for the guys who are trying to carve out roles, who are just playing together for the first time. Those were just a few of the guys who stood out to me. We haven't discussed already.
Yeah, we're kind of vibing together here because I was going to go Seth Trimble route, but I was going to go in the when they do play against BYU and they get into the season. I'm interested to see how these rotations are going to work because when you're playing each other, a lot of guys are getting playing time. If you had to guess, walking into the BYU game, who's starting for North Carolina based on what you've seen both in two blue-white scrimmages and some of the summer action that we saw? Because that's going to be a challenge, whereas in years past, especially under Hubert Davis, we kind of knew. We knew who was going to walk out there. Now he's got however many new players. He's got guys that have different skill sets that can complement each other, but the trick is going to be putting the puzzle together for the best product.
That's right. I think the safest bet is still, have thought this all summer, is going to be, Trimble, of course, Kyan Evans, Bogovats. We haven't really talked about him today. Caleb Wilson and Vesar. Bogovats, by the way, looked to me like he tweaked something early in the second half. So if you didn't notice him in the scrimmage, I think that's why. I think it looked to me like he took himself out of the game, actually. Hopefully not a serious injury. He didn't go back to the locker room or anything like that I could tell. But I think that his greater spontaneity as an offensive player will be meaningful because the Evans Trimble backcourt isn't super creative. And while we're lauding these guys for being unselfish and passing the ball around, the intensity is going to pick up defensively for sure. And so I think having someone who's a little bit more creative off the bounce will help them. I think Bogovats' overall experience as a basketball player too. I mean, he may be a newcomer in the U.S., but he's played high-level basketball for a long time. I think that will help him make the transition more quickly than some of the other guys.
Defensively, how does this team stack up? We've talked about they've gotten bigger, and they've really gotten bigger on the perimeter. So you're not going to have those situations where you've got an opposing point guard posting up your point guard and having a 4 and 5, 6 inch height advantage there. But defensively, interior and on the perimeter, how do you see this team matching up with a team like BYU? Because you mentioned AJ. He went for 30 today in their scrimmage. I think he's going to come out and want to get it done.
He is.
So how does Carolina match up with a team that has an elite scorer and maybe some size, at least early in the season?
I think they're really going to get pushed, especially early in the year. I think this isn't an area I would expect to see wrinkles team defense at this stage. But I also don't think we're going to see many wrinkles in terms of team defense because I don't think they have the personnel to stretch the defense and start pressuring and attacking and forcing turnovers, which they haven't done during the Hubert era. I don't think this is the year they'll do it either. I'm probably higher on the team offensively than most people and maybe a little bit more down on the defense because everyone's expecting, well, they're bigger, they'll be a lot better defensively. And they were pretty bad defensively last year, so that's true. They could improve just on that basis alone. But I think the interior defense needs to be tougher and more physical. I think if we're right, or if I'm right, that Evans and Bogovats play a lot of minutes, and I would throw Dixon in here too. I think they have some average to below average perimeter defenders also. So if you have guys who can be attacked on the perimeter and you're a little soft on the inside in terms of brawniness, that's going to leave you a lot of vulnerabilities. And the reaction to it might be, okay, let's contract the defense. Let's keep things away from the rim and force people to beat us from three, which of course will drive the fans crazy. But that actually might be the best way to go, at least early in the year. Maybe guys will improve individually defensively, but I think there are some vulnerabilities that we're going to see play out.
Yeah, I think they've got to be strong on the perimeter to keep the ball out of the paint and to deal with the lack of beef in there a little bit. But we'll see how it shakes out. Rob, anything left? North Carolina, of course, BYU, and then they sort of get into, I think it's Winston-Salem State, and then it starts. It is October 18th as we record this. They'll be playing real games in 2.5, 3 weeks. It is unbelievable that it's already here. Anything that you've seen that we haven't talked about leading up to BYU on Friday?
I think more than anything, I'm curious if the style changes persist through the first month of the year, and BYU will be test number one, because we know from last year against Memphis in that exhibition game, Hubert treated it like a real game. So I'm counting it from that point of view strategically. But on other occasions in prior seasons, they've said they were going to emphasize something like being the fastest team in the country, and last year they got slower over the course of the year. So I'm curious, to the extent they have made these changes offensively that we've talked about, more player movement, more passing, will that persist through tough times, or will they sort of revert to prior offenses with just spamming a lot of high ball screens? That's something that probably won't play out completely against BYU, but I'm looking to see how entrenched they are with this new style, and of course how effective they are. I mean, BYU is legitimately very talented. This isn't the 1988 BYU team with a bunch of bald 32-year-olds playing who are coming back from missions. I mean, this is a team with real talent, not just Bonsa. And so I think we're going to see them get tested physically. as well as just in terms of a well coached, experienced team.
It's going to be fun to watch North Carolina and BYU. It's been fun to talk about going into the season. Again, you have to caveat everything we say because they've been playing against each other. It could significantly change. There are stories that expand, that go from the annals of time, of guys that went off in blue-white scrimmages and you never heard of again. This team's got a lot of talent. They've been playing against each other. Rob, it's always a pleasure to talk ball with you. We will be doing it all year. Stay tuned to Rob's column. What is that, 3 times a week?
2 times.
2 times a week.
Don't put that evil on me, Tommy.
Yeah. There will be plenty of Rob. We've got fun shows with Rob, post games, plenty of coverage from inside Carolina, of course, the Coast to Coast crew, and always knocking it out. It's going to be a fun season for North Carolina, a little bit different. It's going to take a while to get to know your roster as these guys start to play real games soon enough. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Rob Harrington. We're always sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. Go see him on Franklin Street. And if you're not a premium member of this website, you go to InsideCarolina.com, sign up for that premium membership. You get the benefits of Johnny T-Shirt, but more importantly, you get the benefits of Rob Harrington, of Sherelle McMillan, and all the basketball coverage, plus plenty of coverage of football and Olympic sports at InsideCarolina.com. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.